Hey, welcome back to another episode of Ultra Life. Dr. Ben here. Today, we're going to explore this biofeedback. I have to admit, I used to think that, all the symptoms and feelings that I had, it meant that there was something wrong with me or that I needed to do something about it. But today, I'm going to share some insights that I've had over the last many years that have helped me to gain more trust and confidence in my body and mind. Because I used to really translate this only to the body, but really the most powerful message that we're going to be exploring is that which relates to the biofeedback of our mind, what I'm calling psycho feedback, because there's biofeedback, which is like, yeah, the body is talking to us, like we're getting messages from the body, but we are this multidimensional being. So what's most powerful is understanding, interpreting, and gaining sensitivity to the messages of our psyche or our mind or our soul or our spirit. So like I said, I used to think that anything that I was feeling, anything that was discomfort or uncomfortable, upset, anxiousness, sad, whatever, I used to think that those feelings were something that I had to do something with or fix or process or deal with. But like I said, today we're going to be exploring really what's going on there and what the more empowering opportunities are that actually help us to gain resilience and health, and also, deeper levels of trust and understanding. And as naturally a consequence to that, self-compassion, which is so medicinal in our life experience. So before we dive in, as always, I want to start things off with the quote of the day. This one comes from neuroscientist Candace Pert, and the quote is, "Your body is your subconscious mind." Now, this one's, of course, very short and sweet, but also very powerful, very potent. Your body is your subconscious mind. Your body is your subconscious mind. So, of course, what this is alluding to is that the thoughts, beliefs, feelings that we have are actually interpreted and processed and felt by our body, maybe more so than our quote unquote mind. Now, of course, this quote inherently divides body and mind, and but it also kind of speaks to the fact that they're not separate. And of course, that's been a theme of this podcast here, is that this quote unquote mind body connection is a fallacy because there's nothing that has ever been separate. It's inherently one and whole and the same. And understanding that is ultimately empowering, or at least it can be. So let's first talk about biofeedback. And I think that, I know that this term is used in like a therapeutic context. One example of a therapeutic biofeedback mechanism that we can use is, wearing a heart rate variability tracker, which has become very common. And that helps us to gain awareness and sensitivity to what our body is feeling, because we can see and track the nervous system, in essence, through heart rate variability tracking. And this has become pretty mainstream through wearable technology, whether it be a Garmin watch or any other device. Of course, Heart Math Institute has some of the better heart rate variability trackers and technology that exists. But anyways, that's kind of the context that biofeedback has initially taken on, is that we can kind of experience this connection to our body and to our body's mechanisms and be able to see it and feel it and track it more conceptually with greater sensitivity and awareness. However, what I'm talking about here when I'm using the term biofeedback is simply the feedback that our body is continuously giving us. And if you've tuned into prior episodes, you've probably heard me talk about how symptoms that we're feeling, whether it be pain or a sore throat or a headache or a stomach ache, those symptoms are messages from our body. So rather than treating them, rather than fixing them, rather than, in some cases, suppressing them, we can get curious and sensitive to what those messages are. And some examples of this biofeedback relationship that we can develop is, example of a symptom that's very common is fatigue. you know, and there are a number of messages that fatigue might be sending you. One, rest. Like if you're not resting and recharging your batteries, you're probably going to be tired. And sometimes it's not just the quantity of rest, but also the quality of rest, right? Fatigue can be due to just a sleep deficiency or suboptimal sleep. Duh, and of course that inherent doesn't inherently mean that like you're gonna not have any fatigue anymore just because you understand that. You've got like sleeping better is a whole other, can of worms. But that feedback nonetheless is powerful to understand. So fatigue being due to a lack of sleep, also maybe being due to just like doing too much. Again, common sense, but a lot of people are not tuned in and sensitive to that. Another common symptom, headache. I know for me, usually if I'm experiencing a headache, I kind of take assessment of what I've been doing the last hour, 2 hours, 3 hours. And most of the time, I haven't been drinking any water. So dehydration is a huge cause of headaches, as well as so many other symptoms. But I know for some other people, sometimes I hear Susanna complaining or not complaining, but just like saying like, I've got a headache. And she naturally tends to say, I've got a quote unquote TMS headache, which of course is kind of bridging into the psycho bio context. And what she's referring to is like she's experiencing tension psychologically that's manifesting as tension in her, um, supraspinatus muscles and suboccipitals, and that kind of tension creates that occipital sort of headache for her. That's another example of that. So headaches, fatigue, stomach aches. Hey, like what could our body be telling us if we've got a stomach ache? If we've you know been more gassy or bloated, maybe it's telling us that we've been feeling more anxious and eating under eating with more tension or anxiety. Maybe also our body is just telling us like, hey, maybe you've been eating a little too much broccoli. Maybe you've been eating a few too many beans. Of course, not to say that broccoli or beans are bad, but the point being that our body has a unique, in many cases, microbiome, which is of course connected to our body and sending us messages and signals. And the whole point here, again, is to gain greater sensitivity to the messages that our body / mind, but right now we're just talking about body because that's what we sometimes do, is break things apart. Feedback that our body is giving us. So again, the main take home point here is that our opportunity and responsibility is actually to gain greater sensitivity to. And this is contradictory to, I think, what mainstream conventional wisdom tells us and society tells us, is that we should just be better at dealing with and managing our symptoms, both, again, physical as well as psychological or emotional. But my message and what feels most aligned and empowered to me is that gaining greater sensitivity to these messages that our body is continuously communicating to us helps us to stay on track so that we don't end up in the ditch one way or the other. And what I'm referring to there is a metaphor that I like to share, which is like kind of driving down the center lane, not the center lane, but your lane on the highway. And on one edge of the lane, there's like the rumble strip that keeps you from veering into oncoming traffic. And then on the other side of the road, there's a rumble strip or a guardrail that keeps you from veering off into the ditch. So those rumble strips or on either side of the lane help you to stay in your lane. If you kind of doze off or get distracted or you're texting or whatever, it's like, and you like wake up and you're like, okay, I'm not dead, and the point is, we want to gain sensitivity to that feedback that we're veering off track, so to speak, quote unquote, so that we can naturally course correct and allow our body / mind to come back into balance. So this leads us into discuss this whole phenomenon of psychofeedback that I'm calling, which is really, if we're talking about biofeedback as being gaining sensitivity to the messages that our quote unquote body is giving us, then psychofeedback would be referring to the gaining of sensitivity of the messages that our psyche, our emotion, or our soul, or our spirit is giving us. And I think that this can also be super insightful and empowering. And sometimes these messages are given to us in the form of emotion. For example, if you are feeling anxious, it's not like the point is that if you're feeling anxious, it's not that there's some fault in your body that is causing you to feel anxious. Your feeling of anxiety is kind of a response to something. It's kind of some feedback, like, where am I pointing myself? Am I pointing myself in a direction that doesn't feel good? And specifically when we're talking about emotions, I think that it's most empowering and important to consider where we're pointing ourselves with regard to the thoughts that we're believing, the bandwidth that we're, you know, the content that we're putting into our consciousness, and what we're kind of hanging on to, and the narrative that we're building through our perception, through our thoughts, through the beliefs that we are um, orienting around. So if we're feeling anxiousness, then we're probably caught up in a lot of anxious thinking. If we're feeling irritable, then we're probably caught up in a lot of whatever sort of thinking that leads you to feel irritable. If you're feeling sad or depressed, you're probably caught up in a lot of feelings that lead you feeling sad or depressed. And my whole point here is hopefully to help you to make sense of the fact that the feelings are not a problem. They're just your body slash mind's response to the problem, which is, in this case, when we're talking about psyche and the psychology, it's what you're thinking. And let's face it, a lot of people are fed a lot of narratives, a lot of beliefs, a lot of, society kind of forms or programs us in so many ways. And we are subject to that programming, and our psyche is subject to that programming. And then we feel the consequences of that programming. So the message and the psychofeedback opportunity here is to, okay, gain insight and sensitivity to what that feeling is, what that programming is, so that we can start to question it and start to maybe lay the groundwork of new programmings, new beliefs, new perception that is more aligned with your true nature, your empowerment, and fundamentally also inherently caught up in this conversation is this fact that we are not our feelings, we are not our thoughts, we are the beautiful, perfect, whole and complete presence through which the thoughts and feelings flow. So that's of course like the most empowering stance to take in regard to your psychology and your feeling state and your spiritual essence, is connecting more with your soul level, if you will, the truth of who you truly are, rather than the fleeting experiences of thoughts and feelings and emotions. So again, psychofeedback, what I'm talking about here is gaining greater sensitivity. I think that's a key word. Once again, just like when we're talking about the body, we want to feel the headache so that we can do something about it. We also want to feel the anxiousness so that we can do something about it. And when I say do something about it, when I'm talking about the psyche, I don't mean fix ourselves. I don't mean like anxiety is bad and we should fix ourselves and not feel anxiety. But we can, again, back to that metaphor of the rumble strip. If we're veering off on one side of the lane or the other, and it doesn't feel good to go that way, and it doesn't feel good to go too far that way, then we can just wake up and realize, oh yeah, I've been kind of veering in that direction, and I've been veering in that direction. So really the staying in the lane and the reconnection with your true nature is such a natural, common sense phenomenon that shouldn't be like a, any work. It's not like there's any work to do here. It's just like, oh yeah, that doesn't feel good, that doesn't feel good. I'm just going to let go of those thoughts and beliefs that have been kind of wrapped up in. And of course, this doesn't happen instantaneously per se. Sometimes it does. But the whole point here is for that to become our understanding and our North Star, if you will, pointing ourselves in that direction rather than, the direction of just managing our stress, managing our emotions. The best way to quote unquote manage our emotions is to feel them and respond to them in a healthy, proactive, productive sort of way. All right, so pausing here to talk about our lesson of the day here, and the lesson of the day is to trust the process and to trust nature. And as the YouTube thumbnail here, I shared this is some sagebrush that I literally just pulled out of the ground like an hour or so ago, and this is a twig that was sagebrush that I pulled out of the ground also. And if you could believe it, this came up out of the ground totally naturally. We last fall we just spread some seeds on our property, and just like the seeding, the sagebrush that was coming to seed, we took the seeds and we just kind of threw them out. And this was planted. We paid $60 or something like that. We put it in with like, compost and fertilizer and mulch and irrigation. And this is the result, a dead twig. And the point here is that like nature knows what it's doing. And sometimes we try to intervene and like force something to happen, and it doesn't work. So what can we do? We can just plant the seeds, trust the process, bring intention, attention, our presence to the journey, if you will, but also like realize that nature has its own plan. And of course, this applies to our healing journey, if you will, the timeline of our healing, and also pretty much everything in life. Like we can't force the manifestation process. We can only bring ourselves into fully present. And for me, one of the intentions is this or something better for the highest good of all concerned. Because sometimes I think that we can make intentions or try to manifest or create things in our life and our health with only our personal perception and awareness in mind, and kind of lose sight of the whole global ecosystem of the universe. And if we intend for natural balance, harmony to exist on more of a global collective level, then that will be the case, because that's how nature works. We don't work in silos. We don't operate in silos. We are community, collective, one organism. So trust the process, trust nature. And by the way, yeah, I pulled this out of the ground, not just for this podcast here, but I pulled this out of the ground because we're tearing up a lot of earth. So we're trying to transplant a lot of these from areas of like super growth to areas of less growth in our yard. And we'll see how that goes, right? Because again, nature knows what it's doing. We're just going to maybe try and help nature along in this case with regard to replanting, transplanting these sagebrush. But anyways, I do want to, kind of package up or tie a bow on the whole point around like the bio and psychofeedback process of kind of gaining that sensitivity and responding in a productive, proactive, common sense sort of way. The underlying message here that we're kind of beating around the bush, so to speak, is that your body mind is innately intelligent, perfect, whole, and complete, just the way it is. And I say that so often. I say it to myself. I say it to others. I say it on this podcast here. I say it so often, but I don't say it often enough, because you can't say the truth often enough. And so many people are conditioned or kind of led to believe in whatever way that their body/mind is failing them in some sort of way, that their symptoms are problems, things to fix. And like I said, I've been there. I still get there, and from time to time when I forget, And the whole process of healing, as far as I'm concerned, is so simple. It's so simple and so clear and so easy to wrap your head around, at least, maybe not easy to integrate and live into. But the whole process of healing in body slash mind is just trusting that you are already healthy, because you are. And um, this is such a potent truth that it's sometimes just like brushed off without really allowing it to integrate and to penetrate. You are already perfect, whole, and complete. You are already healthy. So everything that you're trying to do to heal yourself is essentially just telling yourself that you're not whole or healthy. If you're trying to heal yourself, because you can't fix or heal what's already fixed and healed, what isn't broken. And the more we try and live our life and manage our life in that sort of way, like trying to fix things, trying to heal things, the more we're going to feel like there's something to fix or to heal or to bring back into balance. Because again, we gotta trust the process, that your body is self-balancing, your mind is self-balancing, and ultimately the the practice, if you will, is self-compassion, self-trust, and alleviating ourselves from the self-judgment that we've held on ourselves or our symptoms or our process, and really just get out of the way. Just like when it comes to allowing the earth to regenerate and from a construction project, and allowing plants to grow again, sometimes you just gotta plant the seeds, set the intentions, and let nature do its thing. And of course, what that also means is, responding to the insights and inspiration in a proactive, productive sort of way without attachment or resistance. And that can be a hard process. But, you know, doing, essentially living your life and engage, whether it be nutrition, making meals for yourself, or exercise, or, your sleep routine, or all of the amazing lifestyle practices that you're doing. Continue to do them, continue to eat well and live well and be well, but continue to do so from a place of already knowing that you're just already perfect, whole, and complete. It's not like you're eating that salad or making that smoothie because you need to fix something. You're just engaging in those practices because that's what you do when you're healthy. You nourish yourself. That's just how you stay aligned with nature, with your truth, with your health, is you stay aligned by continuing to flood your body with the nourishing foods, hydrating beverages, and practices that keep you aligned, keep you nourished, keep you hydrated. Um, and I think that, again, it's such a fine line of doing things and engaging in life and living from a place of empowerment and trust, and doing the very same things from the place of fear, anxiety, unworthiness, feeling like you're broken, lacking, missing something. You can be doing the exact same thing, but the place from which you do the things and live your life makes all the difference in the world. So, the question to you is, where are you coming from in your lifestyle, in your behavior, in your thoughts, in your intentions? Where are you coming from? Are you coming from a place of trust, grounded in that inherent trust and knowing that you are supported, you are whole and complete, you are plugged in and connected, you are already healthy, whole, and who you're destined to be? Or are you coming from a place of, I need to fix myself? There's something wrong. What can I do to change? So maybe you've been told that there is something wrong, and most people have been, because let's face it, side note, the system, so to speak, both the conventional medical system, the conventional psychiatric system, they monetize pathology. So the more pathology, the more money. So all of the symptoms and feelings are problems to treat or fix or manage. Of course, they're not to there's never the intention of quote unquote curing. Number one, because there's nothing to cure, because there's nothing broken, nothing wrong. And also, if you were to cure something, then you lose a customer, So empowerment is the message, not victimhood, not disempowerment, not reliance upon this or that. And yeah, that's just, of course, side tangent. But yeah, stop judging and also stop pathologizing. Stop believing the pathology that maybe you've been told. Most people have been told that there is something wrong and therefore needs to be some sort of fixing or treatment. And of course, there are acute extenuating circumstances where things are wrong and we need intervention. So this is, of course, stepping 200 feet back and seeing things from the bigger picture. This is, of course, discussing the more chronic and insidious symptoms and feelings that most people do struggle with. So on that note, I want to kind of end things with the challenge of the day today. And the challenge of the day is more of a practical sort of thing, is to write down a physical or psychological feeling that you've been judging. What have you been feeling? What are the pains or symptoms that you've been feeling? And what are your judgments around those? Because they're probably something. So what have you been feeling and what have you been thinking about what you're feeling? And then the follow-up question is to that, which I think is really insightful and empowering to meditate on or to reflect on or to journal upon or to just think on. What is your body/mind trying to tell you? What are the messages? What is the biopsychofeedback process telling you? How can you gain greater sensitivity to those messages and respond in a productive, proactive, inspired, empowered sort of way? So hope that all resonates. Hope this lands. And if it does, just leave me a like or comment or write some feedback. And if you got any questions or want to kind of explore this kind of stuff more deeply, that's kind of what I'm doing, what I'm focused on right now in my personal and professional life, is having conversations that are oriented around the truth of who you are and helping you to see that and connect with that, or I should say reconnect with that, and get around whatever obstacles you may have constructed that have been preventing you from feeling that and reconnecting that and trusting that. So yeah, if you're interested in learning more or having these sorts of conversations, feel free to reach out. Go to www.alter.health or just shoot me an email, info@alter.health, and love to chat and explore this kind of stuff more deeply. So until next time, I hope you have a wonderful week ahead and keep on thriving. Peace and love.